I know this sounds impossible, but the cold hand that grabbed my shoulder last night didn't just touch me. It warned me. And if you think I'm exaggerating, you have no idea what's been happening inside my apartment. By the way, before I continue, you might want to subscribe to the channel, because if something happens to me after this, at least the story won't disappear with me. Now, let me start from the moment everything shifted. I had been living alone for almost a year. Nothing too dramatic about my life. Just work, sleep, repeat. The kind of routine where the silence of the house becomes background noise, where you stop noticing the creaking floors, the refrigerator hum, the wind brushing against the windows. But over the last few weeks, the silence had changed. It had texture, weight. Like someone else was breathing inside it. It started so subtly that I convinced myself I was being paranoid. Shadows that seemed longer than they should be. The faint impression of someone standing just out of peripheral vision. The feeling of walking into a room that someone had just left. But I kept telling myself I was tired. Overworked. Imagination fills gaps, right? That lie held until the touch. It happened at around 10 p.m. on a Tuesday night. I was washing dishes, half listening to some podcast about unsolved disappearances, when I felt it. A hand, not brushing. Not a quick tap. It wrapped around my shoulder, fingers long enough to curl over the front of my collarbone. Cold. Heavy. Intentional. Every muscle in my body snapped tight. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. For a moment, my mind desperately tried to rationalize. Maybe I left the window open and a draft made my shirt move. Maybe I tensed in a weird way and imagined the sensation. But none of those excuses explained the pressure, or the shape of the fingers, or how they squeezed just slightly, as if someone was trying to get my attention. When I finally turned, the air behind me was empty. Completely empty. The lights hummed overhead. The water kept running. Nothing moved, but the cold lingered on my skin, even after the touch was gone. That's when the fear really hit. The kind of fear that doesn't come from a jump scare or a noise in the dark, but from the realization that reality just failed to protect you. Something crossed a boundary. Something reached for you. And deep down, I knew this wasn't a hallucination. Because the hand felt familiar, not in a comforting way, but in the way you recognize a voice you've heard in a dream. Later that night, lying in bed, I kept replaying the moment. Trying to convince myself I imagined it. Trying to convince myself the apartment wasn't watching me. But when the temperature suddenly dropped so fast that I could see my own breath, I knew. Tand wasn't. It was the invitation. That night, I barely slept. Every time my eyes drifted shut, I felt like something was standing inches from my face, waiting for me to fully leave my body behind so it could— What? Touch me again. Whisper something. Pull me somewhere I wasn't meant. At around 3 a.m. I finally forced myself to turn on the bedside lamp. The room washed in a pale yellow glow, but the corners stayed unnaturally dark, almost absorbing the light instead of reflecting it. I told myself I was just tired, exhausted. But even in that exhaustion, something didn't feel right. The air vibrated, not literally, but there was a pressure in it, like when someone stands too close to you. The hairs on my arms lifted, my throat tightened, and then I heard it. A shuffle, not loud, but unmistakable, right behind me, near the foot of the bed. I froze again. You know when your body instinctively knows something is wrong before your brain catches up? That primitive reaction? That's what happened. My chest tightened, and my breaths became shallow, careful, like I was trying not to alert whatever was there. I forced myself to speak. Who's there? Nothing. Just the hum of the lamp and the silence pressing back at me. But seconds later, something else happened. Something small but horrifying in its subtlety. The mattress dipped, very softly, like someone sat down right beside my legs. The shift was so light that at first I questioned if my own heartbeat made the bed move. But no, it wasn't me. This was weight. Pressure. Something real enough to distort the mattress beneath me. I pulled my legs close, instinctively, like a child, trying to get away from the edge of the bed. The dip deepened. Whatever was there leaned closer. My throat dried completely. And then I heard it, a whisper, right by my ear. So close I felt the breath on my skin. A voice rasped, "Don't turn around." Everything in me locked in place. The command wasn't shouted. It wasn't aggressive. It was pleading, desperate. Don't turn around. My eyes fixed on the wall ahead of me, terrified that if I blinked, I would feel that thing press closer. I thought about running, about leaping off the bed and sprinting out the door barefoot, leaving everything behind. But something deep in my mind, not fear, not instinct, something else stopped me. Something told me the voice wasn't lying. Something terrible was waiting if I turned around. My breath trembled. And in that moment, I did something stupid. I spoke again. "What do you want?" The bed shifted, as if the thing considered the question. One long moment. 2. 3. Then, with a slow exhale that crawled down the back of my neck, the voice answered, "You already saw me once." My stomach dropped. "I've never seen you," I whispered. But the voice, "It lahed," a soft, broken, trembling laugh, the kind that sounds more like crying. "You turned," it whispered. "You always turn." My pulse pounded in my ears. I didn't understand what it meant. Not yet. But the weight of that statement hit something inside me, like a memory I wasn't supposed to remember. And then, as I lay there frozen, the voice added something else. Something that made my blood run colder than the hand on my shoulder. "You invited me?" When the voice said "you invited me," something shifted inside my chest. Not just fear, but a recognition I didn't want to acknowledge. "I didn't invite anything," I whispered back, still refusing to turn my head, even a millimeter. But the presence behind me, it leaned closer. Close enough that my pillow indented. Close enough that the warmth of its breath turned cold. Halfway to my skin, it spoke again, a faint, trembling whisper. "You called me the moment you felt alone. The moment you felt alone." Those words hit too deeply, because loneliness had been a constant shadow in my life for months. Not the kind you fix with a phone call or a night out, but the kind that sinks into your bones, the kind that makes silence feel heavy, the kind that makes your mind reach for anything. Anything to fill the emptiness. But I never called anything. I never asked for something like that. Still, the voice continued, almost sorrowful. "You opened the door. Not here." A cold fingertip traced the back of my neck, slow and deliberate. "In your mind?" I shivered violently. Whatever was behind me knew things it shouldn't. Knew me in a way nothing invisible should. I tightened my fists around the blanket, grounding myself, preparing to turn despite the warnings. But before I could even tense my shoulders, the presence shifted. And suddenly, the cold was gone. So fast it felt like a vacuum swallowing the air. The mattress returned to normal. The pressure lifted. The whisper stopped. I thought maybe it left. But then, from the darkest corner of my room, the one the lamp couldn't reach, I heard breathing. Not human breathing. Slow. Damp. Guttural. Like lungs that had been used in a very long time were trying to remember how to work. I stared at that corner without blinking. Something was there. Not invisible, just shrouded in a darkness too dense to be natural. My lamp flickered once. twice. Then the bulb popped with a sharp crack, plunging the room into total blackness. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My voice died in my throat. The breathing grew louder and closer. Every instinct screamed run, but I couldn't move. My legs wouldn't respond. My body wasn't listening to my commands. And then, the breathing stopped. Silence. Total, suffocating silence. It was somehow worse. Seconds passed. 10, 20, 30. Nothing. And then, a hand, the same cold, long-fingered hand, slid across my shoulder again. But this time, instead of grabbing me, it pushed. A firm, deliberate push, guiding me to turn. My body went rigid. The whisper rose behind me, softer now, almost coaxing. "Come on, you always turn." Its tone wasn't threatening. It was delighted, expectant, as if this moment had happened before many times, and it was simply waiting for me to repeat the same mistake. I clenched my jaw. Something inside me, maybe the last piece of logic I had left, whispered don't. But the thing behind me whispered back, breath cold on my ear, "Just look at me." And for a split second, I almost did. The moment I almost turned, something deep inside me snapped, like a survival instinct older than language suddenly waking up. I jerked forward, away from the hand, away from the whisper, away from whatever was lurking inches behind me. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. Primera. Ra. Ine. I stumbled out of the bedroom, slamming the door behind me even though I knew a wooden door wouldn't stop something that didn't need to open it in the first place. My breath shook as I pressed my back against the hallway wall. The apartment felt wrong. Heavier. As if the air had thickened into something living. My chest rose and fell rapidly. I kept telling myself to calm down, that panicking would only feed whatever it was. But then, from behind my bedroom door, I heard it. A soft, deliberate knock. 3 taps. Slow. Measured. Almost polite. My blood ran cold. Another knock. This time louder. I covered my mouth, trying not to make a sound. I didn't want it to hear me breathe. Didn't want it to know exactly where I stood. Then, the whisper seeped through the cracks of the door. "You can't run from me." Something about the voice had changed. It wasn't sorrowful anymore. Or pleading. It was smiling. I could hear the smile in it. "Go away," I managed to choke out. "You're not real. You're not." "You're not." A low laugh cut me off. A laugh that didn't sound human. It scraped, like something trying to imitate laughter but failing. "You called me," it repeated. "You're the one who's real. To me." My knees almost gave out. I needed to leave. Whatever rules this thing followed, it clearly didn't need permission to get close. And if it had touched me once, if it had sat beside me, if it had pushed me, I didn't want to know what it could do next. I forced myself down the hallway, grabbed my keys, and yanked the front door open. The hallway outside my apartment was brightly lit, normal, safe. The kind of safe that felt almost insulting compared to the nightmare behind me. I stepped out, but as soon as I crossed the doorway, I felt it again. A hand on my shoulder. I froze. The shame. Cold. The same fingers. The same pressure. My heart slammed against my ribs. Slowly, terrified, I turned my head, and for a moment, I thought I'd see it. But the hallway was empty. The lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then steadied again. I staggered backward, clutching the railing, trying to breathe. Had it followed me out? Could it follow me anywhere? A sick realization settled in my stomach. It didn't matter where I went. The invitation wasn't tied to the apartment. It was tied to me. I rushed down the stairs, desperate to get as far from my home, from that presence, as possible. My thoughts were spiraling, racing. my pulse pounding in my ears. By the time I reached the ground floor, I was shaking uncontrollably. I stepped into the cold night air and leaned against the building, breathing hard. For the first time since it touched me, I felt alone again. But not for long. A whisper curled around the back of my neck, drifting through the darkness. "You always turn." I spun around the second I heard the whisper. Of course, no one was there, just the parking lot. Silent. Empty. A few streetlights buzzing weakly overhead. My breath came out in quick, shaky bursts. I pressed both hands against my head, trying to force some sense into myself. "This isn't happening," I muttered. "This isn't real. I'm tired. I'm stressed." A dry, breathy chuckle cut through the night air. "Not beside, me not behind." But inside my ear, so close I could feel the vibration of it travel through my skull. "You're not tired," the voice whispered. "You're aware." I stumbled back, nearly falling. My eyes darted everywhere. Behind cars, along the sidewalk, up at the windows, searching for any human shape, any sign of movement. But the world around me stayed painfully ordinary. The ordinary never felt so terrifying. I bolted toward my car, fumbling my keys as my hands trembled uncontrollably. When I finally managed to unlock the door, I threw myself inside and slammed it shut, locking it immediately. I sat there in the dark, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. For a full minute, nothing happened. No whispers, no touches. Just the sound of my ragged breathing. I clung to that silence like a lifeline. Then, tap. A single knock. On the window right beside my head. I jerked violently away from it, my shoulder slamming into the center console. A second knock, then a third. Each one slow. Deliberate, like someone was knocking from the inside of a coffin. I forced myself to look. The window was fogged. From the outside. That shouldn't be possible. Not with the warm air inside the car and the cold night outside. The condensation was backwards. Wrong. A shape began to form behind the fog. Not a full face, just the outline of fingers. Long, thin. Spreading slowly across the glass. My breath hitched. The hand dragged down the window, leaving streaks in the condensation like it was tracing the path of its own fingers. Then a single word began to appear, drawn into the fog. Turned my chest tightened. My lungs refused to pull in air. The presence outside leaned closer. The handprint on the window flattened, pressing against the glass, fingers distorting like they were trying to reach through it. "You always turn," the voice breathed, but now it was coming from everywhere. The car, the air, the space around my head. Not outside, not inside. It was like the sound existed in a place just barely overlapping with reality. I slammed the car into reverse, tires screeching as I backed out of the parking spot. I didn't care about the noise. Anything was better than staying still. As I sped out onto the main road, the whisper followed me, weaving through the wind from the open window vents. "You brought me with you. You brought me because you felt alone." And now, the voice shifted, becoming softer, almost loving. "Now you're not alone anymore." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. My heart was hammering. My mind felt like it was unraveling thread by thread. And then, as I stopped at a red light, I made the mistake of glancing at the rearview mirror. Just a quick glance. And in that single moment, I saw something move in the back seat. Something sitting there, perfectly still, as if it had been waiting the entire time. The darkness pooled around it, hiding every feature except the faint suggestion of long fingers resting on the seat. I didn't breathe. The traffic light turned green. I didn't move. Then the thing in the back seat leaned closer. Its form shifted just enough that the darkness around it seemed to pulse, like breathing. I watched, horrified, as one long, pale hand slowly reached forward, stretching toward the space between the front seats. My voice cracked. Please, please, just leave me alone. Silence. Then the whisper right behind my ear, even though the figure was still in the back seat. But you asked me not to. My blood ran cold. I never asked for you. I snapped, but the words came out, shaking, broken. The figure leaned closer. You did? It whispered. The night you cried into the dark and said you didn't want to be alone anymore. I heard you. I always hear you. I felt sick. My stomach twisted. Because deep down, I remembered. That night. That moment. Anything. You're already turned. No, I choked out. You turned the moment you called me. I swerved onto a side road, tires screeching, heart hammering so violently I could barely see straight. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed distance, space, air, something. But no matter how far I drove, the presence stayed. Close, patient, smiling in the dark. And then a cold hand settled gently, almost tenderly on my shoulder. The same hand from my kitchen, the same hand from my bedroom, the hand that started everything. I didn't turn, I wouldn't turn. Not this time, but the whisper came again, soft as ever. You don't need to turn, I'm already here. The car's headlights flickered. The world, and the last thing I felt was that cold hand tightening around my shoulder once more, not stopping me, not pulling me, just reminding me I wasn't alone anymore.